all want to make money by doing something we love. If you could turn your hobby into your job, you'd never work a day in your life, right? Welcome to Hobby Hustle, the ultimate podcast where collecting passion and business collide. Now, here's your host, Zach Nigett.
Welcome to episode 10 of Hobby Hustle. What is going on, everybody? I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm your host, Zach Nigett, and I appreciate you taking time to spend with us. If you haven't been enjoying the pod, please be sure to like, subscribe, rate us, and of course, share with your friends. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment if there's any thoughts or suggestions you have. I greatly appreciate your support and hope you enjoyed the show. Today's guest is a passionate collector of pop culture and well-established content creator. His expertise spans a wide array of non-sports items, including trading cards, pop culture memorabilia, wrestling, photography, Star Wars, and much more. Beyond his passion for collecting, he's worked as a film and video editor in Hollywood and is the host of the podcast Between Two Slabs. Additionally, he is the first brand ambassador for audio media grading. His deep knowledge and enthusiasm have made him a well-respected voice in the community, particularly when it comes to pop culture type photos and music grading. You can find him on social at Merlin Collects or his podcast Between Two Slabs. He always puts a smile on my face when I see him, and I'm honored to welcome a friend, passionate collector, and pop culture geek, Merlin, to the show. Merlin, how are you, my friend?
Well, first of all, thank you for that great introduction from you. I greatly appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, man. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'm excited to talk with you today because I think you got a ton of really cool information and knowledge that you can share with us. But before we get into that, I know obviously you're a huge music geek, and this has been a pretty epic week for you for concert going. So could you tell us a little bit maybe about what you got to see this week?
Oh, well, this past Sunday, I got to see the Foo Fighters for my second time only, believe it or not, at BMO Stadium, which is the Los Angeles Football Club soccer team over at USC. And the Pretenders opened up, and that was actually my first time seeing Chrissy Hynde and the Pretenders. I think my girlfriend knew one song of theirs. And then for the really big, music aficionados, I went, Wednesday night to see Herbie Hancock at the Headhunters 50th anniversary of their debut album, which is a classic funky jazz album for those who appreciate Herbie Hancock. And believe it or not, I was very surprised of how many youthful people, young people were there, not with just their parents, but by themselves appreciating the music. So that makes me feel all great and warm inside that people of all ages still enjoy jazz.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, dude, that Headhunters album is classic. I mean, like you said, funky beats and, it's jazz, it's funk. It was everything. I listened to that so much when I was young. So that definitely takes me back. And that was cool that you got to see it. Speaking of taking us back, I would love for you to take us back to the start of your sort of collecting journey. And what are some of your early memories and what got you started collecting?
Oh my gosh. I mean, well, first of all, I'm sure it's just like most of, you all out there, the viewers, yourself, Zach, and, the guests you've had. We all started when we were a kid. There was that time when your parents, your grandparents, or relative or something went and bought you a box of like football or baseball cards at your normal Circle K or Kmart or wherever, and they give it to you for Christmas or your birthday. Well, that was this dates me, but 1979. The first thing I ever got was a box of Topps football because that's pretty much all they had was baseball, football, and no one even back then even cared about basketball.
Yeah.
Which I wish in 79, I wish I had gotten a box of basketball then because I'd be super rich and lucky. But like you said, no one had those then. And I remember I think the first exciting thing I pulled out was like a rookie, like Earl Campbell card out of it or something. And then I got baseball the following year, 1980. And that was, of course, the big one out of that was like Ricky Henderson and 81, Cal Ripken Jr. So, of course, I loved having the cards. And like most kids then, even though I took real good care of them, I wrapped them around in a rubber band and threw them in a box and kind of forgot about it. And then after a while, high school, I was wrestling, being creative, going to school, having fun with friends, chasing girls. So I lost interest in cards again. But then somehow in the early 90s, when I was in college, University of Tennessee, kind of got back into it again with a bunch of buddies in my fraternity. And we started for extra money, beer money, we started going to card shows around Eastern Tennessee because I went to the University of Tennessee. And what I would do would get a lot of the alumni football player who had, cards like Topps, Pro Set, Fleer, all the football. And we would walk around before football and sell these like common cards of like Reggie Cobb. I forget who else the other Tennessee stars were, but we'd sell for like $10 and I would sell like 20 of them within an hour. That's what kind of hustle I would do. And now I had like beer, drinking money, party money. I was ready, but we were like, let's take it another step bigger. Let's go to shows and do it. So I started doing shows. I even bought display cases back in the 90s, and I started making friends with all the local card shops. And then they started teaching me about selling like comic books and pop culture stuff. They're like, Merlin, here, take this Death of Superman. Remember the Death of Superman, Zach?
Oh yeah, that was a big deal when it came out.
Oh yeah, man! Like, and all those like crazy cover variants of like Batman and stuff. And then remember like the Valiant comics and the Image comics and everything. And
Image was my jam for sure.
Yeah,
man.
right.
Spawn and stuff. Those were awesome.
Yeah, and they would just say like, listen, Merlin, like. Thank God they all trusted me back there. Like, here, take this case, sell it at this price, and all you got to do is bring me back this amount of money. Whatever extra money you make, that's yours to keep. So, I would do that, and I would sell it out and come back and give them, half the money they were, the money they were owed.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we'll keep giving Merlin some cases and stuff. And let me tell you, I would just sell them at low prices, and other dealers would get so mad at me because I would sell like the Death of Superman for like $20. Rather, other dealers would sell it for like $100, and they would get mad at me for like price gouging or whatever it was.
Yeah, undercutting them.
I'm trying to get rid of it, man. I'm just trying to make some beer money, and that's all I care about. I'm not planning on. You should never hold this stuff. And this was, during the junk wax era. So the sooner the better, right? The sooner you got rid of the stuff, the better off you were. Because you don't want to be, it's like poker. You don't be left holding all the money on the table. You want to get out of it. And then again, I went back to graduate school, got a girlfriend, started, focusing on filmmaking, moved to LA. So, coming to LA is the last thing I care about is collecting cards.
Yeah, totally.
I was collecting, dates and music and, going to concerts and more dates and DJing and more dates. And then finally, about 10 years ago, I finally, met a girl who finally settled me down. It wasn't like the girl du jour. She anchored me down like, I'm keeping you. You're settling down. I'm moving in. So I was like, shit, what do I do now? I was actually editing a documentary. Oh, gosh, this was like 2018 about Russian hockey. It was called, I started off being an AE and then eventually somehow by mistake became the editor. Also, who knew I was going to become a producer too on it, but it was a lot of work. For 2.5 years, I worked. It was called the Red Penguins, I think. I think you can find it on Amazon, but it was about Russian hockey, like the Red Army team, the fall of communism, and how the NHL owners wanted to take over the Red Army team. But at the same time, all those Russian players were, being affected by the corruption of the government and the mafia. They said, well, if you don't give us your NHL money, like 90%, we'll kill you and your family. But so all those players, you remember like Jaromir Jagr or whoever it was, and who was the Detroit Red Wings guy that was really big?
Not Iserman? No, that was before.
No, Fedorov? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Those guys all moved to the U.S., right? Remember? Because they don't want to go back to Russia and get killed and have to pay 9% of their, $2-3 million contract, right? So they moved back. And when I was doing that, I remember, I collected a lot of hockey cards and other cards back in the 90s. And this is like 2018. And I was doing fantasy football and basketball and all that stuff then. And I started reminiscing like, you know what, Zach? I've got a lot of money now. I'm going to get back in the cards and I'm going to spend me some money. So I had no clue what I was doing. This is just all from me, my experiences from 25 years prior. So I'd go on during breaks, go on eBay and like, oh, look at this card. It's got an autograph. It's got a rookie logo. It's got a serial number and it's got a patch. That's freaking awesome, man. I think I'll spend some bucks and I'll just buy that. So I think the first cards I bought was like Patrick Mahomes and Luka Doncic because those were my favorite, young players. if you had Patrick Mahomes on your fantasy team, you were probably winning that season, that first year when he started. And then, of course, I was mesmerized by Luka, from all his YouTube videos when he was playing at Real Madrid. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to spend $1,000 on these cards. And I think I bought like a Flawless and a National Treasures. But then I also bought a Leaf Trinity of like Mahomes, because I thought back then Leaf was still a premium card.
Sure.
I didn't know it was a pajama card. I didn't really know. So I didn't win them all, even though during the pandemic, I still came ahead with those Leaf cards when I sold them. But the Flawless National Treasures I bought of Luka and Mahomes, I still have kept, and I'm going to hold on to those because those remind me. And then, and of course, the pandemic hit. I had all these cards. The studios closed down. I'm, stuck in my apartment in Los Angeles. My girlfriend's moved in. I'm, going bonkers, getting cabin fever in the place. Like, what do I do? Like, man, maybe I should start selling some of my collection that I have. This is, 2 years later. So I've got a hell of a collection at this point. And as you know, I'm sure everyone else is aware, I'm selling these cards that are already graded for like 10, 20 times more than what I ever paid for them. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm also working my ass off remotely from home, editing too. So everything's going great. Like the pandemic was a big silver lining for me. I was making bank, man, off the cards, off editing, everything. I was like, I didn't want to leave, except I missed my friends, of course.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, I can't wait to get out. So I started watching a lot. It's like, what do I do? Like, is there a YouTube video? So I watched YouTube videos of different people because that just got me through the day. I also, for like meditation, I would clean cards and prep cards in the dark. My girlfriend's like, what are you doing in the dark with gloves on? Like creepy. I was like, you don't need to know. Get out of here. And I was like, man, I'm doing pretty good at this. Like, most of my cards are coming back PSA 10s or BGS 9.5 gem mints. Like, I've got a little gift for this. And I was like, you know what? Like, to keep myself busy, I'm going to start making like videos too about me, getting cards just like everybody else. And as you know, I would do a post and I would get 5,000 views off one post. You're like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then all of a sudden the pandemic got out. They started doing card shows. This is like spring of 21. And I started making videos. Like, understood that watching all these other videos on YouTube, like understood that most people got into the hobby during the pandemic and probably they don't know how to interact with a vendor or vice versa. And there's probably also some social anxiety because we haven't been around people at all. So why don't I go to all these shows in Southern California area and interview the dealers and the attendees and see what their expectations were. And I got, a great reception from these. A lot of people watched them. People knew me from doing this. And that's how I met Dan, the great curator. I saw all his stuff on the table, and this guy had wrestling, had cool pop culture, had good mix of like sports too. I'm at the same things I had. And I'm like, dude, you've got a Ric Flair belt. You're freaking awesome. We're going to be best friends. And Dan goes, who are you, man? First of all, he goes, Merlin, that was the first thing. That's how you introduced yourself to me. You were like, we're going to be best friends and we're going to do a show together. And then one day Dan like texts me, emails me. He's like, you know what, Merlin? Like, I was really inspired by your videos. I'm going to start making videos too. And I'm like, well, good luck, man. Good luck. If there's anything you need, let me know. And of course, he reached out like, what kind of mic do you get? What kind of lighting? How do you set up for a live stream? And I helped him through it. And look what I've created. I created a monster,
You've created the monster that is Dan the Great.
Exactly. Curator. And then I started, trying to sell some pop cultures because I started buying a lot of the pop culture, like the Marvel cards from the 90s and even vintage stuff from the 80s. And I've always been a pop culture fan since I went to film school. And I'm just, I'm always in, like you said, music and TV and film. So that's always going to be my passion, is like music and pop culture stuff, even over sports, even though I love going to, seeing the Dodgers and the Angels and the Chargers and the Rams and whoever else they play. And, and there's, so many opportunities out here in Los Angeles to see sports, but also for concerts, movies, I'm in the guild too. So I get to go to all these like Q&As. My girlfriend's spoiled rotten because I get all these, perks and things. Even when I go to football games, sometimes I get a media perk and we go on the field. So she's spoiled rotten.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Merlin, because I want you to sort of, I know a lot of people who are listening to this maybe know you from shows and on the collectible hobby side, but I don't know if everybody realizes, and you've mentioned it a couple times, but that you are a professional, video editor in Hollywood. And so could you maybe just tell us a little bit about that and sort of what you've done, if there's any like specific project that sticks out to you?
Oh yeah. Well, I started, if people don't know, I actually started DJing like 20 years ago. I got into like doing raves and everything and doing parties. And actually we'll talk about it later. I had done this party like over 20 years ago, the Super Bowl party. This girl hired me for, and she hired me and this other guy. This other guy was Stevie Aoki of all people. He wasn't even known then at the time, but he had a huge fan. All these hipsters in Eagle Rock. I was in Eagle Rock, and he's like, "Dude, I like your music selection. I'm doing some parties, these bars in a Hollywood area and some, house parties. Do you want to play with my group of friends?" I'm like, "Dude, I would love to." And I did my own promotions, and I DJ, professionally in the regional, in the LA area for like almost 10 years. And that was a lot of fun, great experience, fun money, meeting people. Oh my God, just the stories I could tell. That's a whole nother show itself.
That's a separate.
I was like, you know what? I'm getting older. They're staying the same age, which, for a while, that's not bad, but I can only stay up so long till 6 a.m.
Right.
And so I went back to school for editing, God, over 10 years ago. And then I started, getting back into editing. And I went to film school 30 years ago, a long time ago, for directing. And I just started editing, getting on reality shows, whatever I could, because I wanted to get into the union. That's your goal if you're in editing. And so I started doing Housewives of whatever county, or, Atlanta, or all those shows, WAGs, all those dating shows on MTV. I've all worked on, you name them all. Like, I can't even watch them anymore because I know the structure of them. I know when it goes into an interview or an OTS and then to a scene. So I know the structure. So it's hard. The only thing I can watch that I didn't work on is 90 Day Fiance. It's a show. But I started doing that. But my goal was to work in, fictional scripted narrative, which is, movies and regular TV shows. And then finally I got into the guild, and I started because one of my good friends is a celebrity, Danny McBride and David Gordon Green and all those guys who they went to film school with me in the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And so they got me my, big break. So I started working on shows and movies with Danny McBride, and that got me into the union. And I've got to work with all my friends. And I even got to start working on the beginning of The Mandalorian.
Oh, wow.
But, for like 6 weeks. Unfortunately, my father passed away at that time, so I had to bail out and go deal with it. But I came back and started working on a bunch of shows. Then I did that documentary. First of all, this is the worst. My first ever editing experience as an assistant editor, first job ever, professional job, was having to go to the Caribbean and working for a few months in the Caribbean.
Wow.
And living in a house with 4 other assistants. It was brutal.
Yeah, I'm sure it was so hard, right?
They put us in a mansion that I wasn't allowed to tell anybody where we're staying. I mean, my shower could have an orgy in there. It was so huge. It was like 10 shower heads. I was like, oh my God, this is great. It was an island called Anguilla, St. Martin. Oh my gosh, it was the life. I was eating lobster every day. But and then I worked on the documentary, which was Living Hell. I'll never do it again. But it got me my experience, got me on the resume. It got me an editor credit. And I started doing editing. But unfortunately, the pandemic hit. But then the pandemic, I started working on shows for the studios, for NBC and all those about the pandemic, which was freaking me out because I have to go wearing a mask and wipe down all the keyboards and everything because my girlfriend was so OCD. And those shows, there were a lot of sketch shows. I don't know if you remember those. It was like comedians doing sketches from their homes.
Sure. Yep.
And then they would throw it to me. And my job was being like a sequence builder, a show builder, which I have to go and get all the scenes and make them timed perfectly, ins and outs, the music, everything, to make it fit for a commercial break and then coming back in or fitting that 2 or 3 hour show. And man, let me tell you, that is like science. It is living hell. And literally I got insomnia from it. There were times when I was literally working an hour before the show went on air on NBC.
Oh, wow.
Just trying to find 2 frames to get rid of. Like, that's how precise we had to be, like 2 frames. And I'm still working. It's stressful. And I'm trying, and then finally we figured out, let's just take out at the end, and we'll just have to take some of the music out and just cheat it a little. But man, but man, I got paid 3 times golden time. So if anybody's in the union, 3 times golden time was money in the bank, folks. That was a lot of money. So I told my girlfriend, like, listen, just deal with it. You can wipe me down with some Clorox wipes when I get home, but let me make this money right now.
Yeah.
And I'm still editing, and it's great because I try to pivot that into the hobby as well by helping other people doing their content. I help Dan with his stuff, your curator, Mr. Minty, a lot of product people. I help them make, product commercials. So if anybody needs help with like social media stuff, I'm always here to help out. So that's another thing. You've always got to think outside the box and hustle. And unfortunately, editing is a hustling job since you're a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this card hobby, selling cards, is also a hustle. So I'm always in the daily hustle and the grind, trying to make it. You know how it is.
Yeah,
right?
man. Well, no, I think it's awesome. And like I said, the best part about you, Merlin, is whenever I see you, man, or talk to you, you're just always so positive, and you put a smile on people's faces, man. So I don't want you to ever lose that, even if you might be stressed out. Like you keep the positivity rolling. But I think one of the things that it highlights is that you are like so interested in a wide variety of things. And I know that over the past sort of 18 months, you've really started to become an expert in the pop culture type photo scene. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what is a type photo?
Yeah, I mean, I started watching a lot of videos, especially like Jeff Wilson and stuff. And I remember they had a lot of people on that were talking about type 1 photos. And these were, of course, vintage ones, like the original Honus Wagner. I mean, these are like $1 million photos. The rookie year of Mickey Mantle, or Ty Cobb. And I'm just seeing these, and they're showing them off. And I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I live in Los Angeles. I live in the mecca of pop culture. Mm-hmm. And if there is a photo of a car or anything, even of like Star Wars or the Dukes of Hazzard or Charlie's Angels or anything or Star Trek, then there's got to be a photo of it. There's got to be an original photo. And me, when we first started getting into this, me and Dan, we were heavy into Star Wars. We're heavy into Marvel, especially the MCU. I was heavy into wrestling, and I'm like, you know what? I've got to find this stuff before everybody starts figuring it out too. Mm-hmm. So I would go to estate sales, flea markets around the LA area with a bunch of buddies. A lot of the guys from like Gas Trading Cards, I'll plug them. And they would introduce me to people who had these photos, and I'd start finding the photos. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I think one of the very first photos, I didn't even know what I had. I bought it for $20. It was Prince. And he was doing like the sexy dance like this in front of the microphone. He had all the silks, and, he was all dressed up. And on the back, it said, first concert for Purple Rain. It was like 1984. But I think the stamp on the back had 1985, but it said St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm like, well, this is awesome. $20. I sent it in to get graded with PSA because I think they're the only people as of right now that will authenticate type photos, authentic photos. And it came back a type 1 press proof photo, and they even put it one of a kind on the front.
Wow.
I didn't even know. It cost
you hit the jackpot on your first photo.
Yeah, the first one, man. Little did I know, and if people don't know, it costs basically $50 to authenticate a photo, and then you have the option if you want to get it slabbed or not. And I think the most part you should get it slabbed unless it's oversized. If it's past like 11x17, they can't slab it, but you should slab it because to protect it, it just looks nicer. And that label on there said one of a kind. I got it the day of I arrived to the National last year in Chicago, your hometown, Zach. I had it out on display on Wednesday night, which is, I guess, the VIP preview night. I had it out for $2,000. It didn't even last. Like a couple people, like YouTubers, streamed it, did live streams and showed it, like showcased it out of my display case. Within an hour, it was gone. And then by that night and later that week, all these people who either saw it at my table in person or saw it on YouTube from other people's videos inquired about it. And unfortunately, I was like, it is gone. They were like, man, I would have paid more for that. And I'm like, man, maybe I should have charged more, man. But I didn't care. I was still excited.
Yeah, and hindsight's always 20/20, but you did well, and you can never go broke taking profit, Merlin.
It was great. And then I'm like, dude, what else is out there? And I have spent days, nights, just like you do with cards, man, trying to read the front and backs of Type 1 photos. It doesn't even matter if it's 2, 3, 4. Let me tell you, I've got them in all classifications. I've got them. I probably have spent $3,000 on getting rejected ones too. So I have eaten crow. I've eaten $3,000 on rejected photos because they tell you it's a print or a copy. Another thing is they will refund you though if they tell you that it's on their side. They can't. There's not enough DNA to for it to pass to what kind of classification is, because Type 1 means that the photo is taken from the original negative within 2 years of that photo taken. Type 2 is also from original negative, but after 2 years. So it could be, so for like the Ty Cobb one, if it was Ty Cobb from like 1910 or wherever the photo was taken 1910, well, if they found the original negative and they redeveloped it in 1960, that's a Type 2. But still, that could still be worth a lot of money, because who owns that original negative, and then how many were made from that negative? No one really knows, unfortunately. And then Type 3 is a vintage photo, just like a Type 1, meaning it comes from a duplicate negative, not the original, but it has to also be made within 2 years of that photo taken, just like a Type 1. So you could have, and a lot of people sometimes like that more than a Type 2. It's apples and oranges, but the quality, and you probably know this, isn't going to be as nice as that original negative photo will be.
Sure. But
it is also vintage. So if it was something, say, like Honus Wagner, that, original photo, but then they have a duplicate negative, but that was also made in like 1908.
Right.
That could still be worth tens of thousands of dollars, because it's vintage, and who knows? There's probably only a couple of them made. Yep. Whereas the Type 4 is just like a Type 2, but it comes from the duplicate negative, and it's made after 2 years. Let me tell you, you can usually tell a lot of those because the quality is not that good whatsoever. It's very muddy looking. I do have some examples I can show you here all later of different types.
Sure.
But the thing is, they don't grade photos, because the more crap on them, the better the story. The better the story, they're able to determine when the date was. And that's why I was trying to tell you, because I have one I can show you later, of Jane Mansfield. Okay. It got rejected, but they refunded me the money because they couldn't tell. There wasn't a wet stamp with the date on it, and they couldn't tell if it was taken within the 2 years or after the 2 years of the photo taken. They could determine it was from the original negative, but they couldn't tell it was before or after. So they couldn't authenticate it, and they could not slab it. They said it's a real photo, but it's rejected, unfortunately.
Yeah. So just to clarify for the audience, so Type 1 and Type 2 are sort of, I know you said Type 3 could be most desirable because of time, but Type 1 and Type 2 mean they're coming from the original negative. So they are the best quality. Type 1 is the original negative within 2 years.
Correct.
Type 2 is the original negative after 2 years, anytime. So that could be 2.5 years, it could be 10 years. It doesn't matter, but it is the original. And then type 3 and 4 are from a duplicate negative, whereas type 3 is the duplicate negative, but within the right time period. Right. And then type 4 is, like you said, much lower quality duplicate negative from many years past. So, and from a value standpoint, maybe you can show us some examples. And I'm sorry for people listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see, but we can try to describe some of this. But this is, again, is all done through PSA. Like Merlin said, you pay a fee just like you would for grading a photo, or I'm sorry, a card. But you send it into PSA to have them look at your photos, and it's 2 different facilities. It's not California. It's on the East Coast.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely 2 different facilities.
In New Jersey,
which I bring up only because you mentioned you've had some issues. I've done some photo submission myself, and you have a level of expectation dealing with the card stuff, but the photo stuff is totally different, totally separate, different people. So I just want to make sure the audience was clear on how that is. So maybe you could tell us, Merlin, a little bit from the desirability standpoint, maybe show some examples of these different types.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everybody's going to want that type 1. It's vintage, and again, like I said, type 3. They're if you look at the labels of type 1 and 3, they're both going to say vintage on them. And vintage means it's not old. It means that it's taken within those 2 years of the photo being taken.
Got it.
And then type 2 and 4 are non-vintage because they're years afterwards. And a lot of times, you're not going to see many type 2s photos, but if you do see them, more than likely, those photos were taken in the 80s, and they call that a restrike. And that became very popular in the 80s. And they were taking all the original photos or the original negatives from the 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, even from the movies. Like I had a type 2 of Frankenstein, the original movie from, from 31, and they were restriking it. That's what that means. So, yeah, I can show you. What do you want to see first, Zach?
What? Maybe you could show us type 1. We can sort of work our way down 2, 3, 4, whatever.
I'll show you. So this is pretty cool. So here you go. This was like one of the first cool ones also I got. This is a type 1. And you can't really see here, but it's kind of got like a studio flap on the back, but they flapped it down. Usually there's a lot of DNA on the back, and what I mean by DNA, they call it wet stamps, or you'll have writing or a sticker from the photographer that they'll put on here. And a lot of times it'll have the photographer's name, their phone number, their company name. Yep. Might have the archivist or the library where it was stored.
Yep.
That's a sticker or stamp of it as well. Or it might, for me dealing with pop culture, it'll have the studio. So, for instance, this might have, I think this was, NBC. So it might have NBC, or it could even be Universal, since Universal took over NBC if they held on for years. And this is actually a type 1 of Leonard Nimoy of Spock from 1966, even though they put 60s on here on the label. And it says original photograph, type 1, Leonard Nimoy, NBC, Star Trek. So here he is, Leonard Nimoy as Spock.
Awesome.
So that's really cool. It's like an 8x10.
Yeah. So a lot of these, there are some, but the exception to the rule would be color. A lot of these type 1s are going to be black and white, and you can see that crystal clarity, of the image.
Definitely. Yeah. It's going to be very, very sharp.
Yep.
You always look at places where the contrast is going to be a little harder, especially like, black and white. So like if people have dark hair and it's a dark background,
yep.
If it's a nice quality type 1 photo, you're going to be able to tell that contrast, that line. Yeah. You're going to see that the hairs. It's not going to look as muddy or blurry.
Yep.
And here is a good example. They don't have stamps on here, but you'll see like the cards or the photo stocks watermark on here, which got popular in the late 60s and 70s. They started putting the watermarks on the back, like Kodak or Fuji. And then you've got a sticker here that describes what it is. And here it is. It says foreground. It talks about all the Jackson family. Now, most of the time, like I said, 99% of the time, the type photos, authentic photos, are going to be black and white. And the reason is cheaper. They've got to get them out. The photographer does. They've got most of the time they are topical, they are vintage, because that photographer wants to sell those to the publisher or to the press, because that's their business, right?
Yeah.
So if they've got some of like a famous person or a ball player or something, they want to sell that photo and get it to the newspaper or to the magazine company or TV guide and get that out, because it has to be to that date, whatever happened then. And then you got to remember, these things weren't digitally made back then. They were using real negative, and I don't think many young people know this. It's 35 millimeter film. They're developing it. They're going back to their house. They're turning off all the lights, which is called a dark room, and they're making it. It's like cooking a cake, folks. Like, you've got to like time it right. You know, it's by your preference of how good you want this photo to look. And because there's less room for error, that's why they're black and white. And as you know, most of your, especially in the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s, most of your newspapers and your magazines would publish a black and white photo.
Yep.
Every now and then there would be a colored one, like this one, for example. This one's of the Jackson family.
Oh, wow.
There's cool. Michael in the back.
Yeah.
There's Janet Jackson and the rest of them. The only person who's missing out of this one is Jermaine, even though he was on the show. And this was for CBS. This is a colored photo, type 1 photo from 1977. They did a TV show back then. I had the black and white version of this one. I sold this one on Heritage, and I think it went for about $1,200 on Heritage.
Wow.
The black and white one. So I've just got this one back.
Very cool. Do you have any type 2 that you could show, Merlin, so people could sort of see a difference maybe?
Yeah, let me check.
Or not. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting about this while you're looking is that, you know, a lot of these photos, you do need to do a lot of research and spend time.
I don't have a slab type 2, but I'll show you a type 2.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have a type 2 yet, but here's a type 3. These are type 3s.
Yeah.
So here's again, this is a type 3 photo. When I bought it, unfortunately, I thought it was a type 1. Because if you look on the back here, it's got all the DNA. It's got a description of what the show was about. It's got the photographer's name, and then his, like, I guess he archived it as well, because it says Howard Frank photo of the stars or whatever.
Cool.
And this one has Michael Jackson and Leslie Uggam. Did you see it? Anybody see Deadpool versus Wolverine?
Yeah, I got to see it with my kid.
Oh boy. Okay. So this is probably, she's the woman you probably want to close your kid's ears on, because she was talking about where's her damn cocaine.
Oh yeah.
That's her. That's Leslie Uggam right here. That's
funny.
The older black woman that he lived with.
Yeah, and is that from Sesame Street? Is that
it is? This is a Christmas special that Michael did, and Leslie Uggam used to be on Sesame Street back in the 70s. But this, unfortunately, is a type 3. But like I said, it's still vintage. So it's still 1978 because it was taken. But let me tell you, if this was a type 1, Michael's hair, his afro would be a lot more sharper than on here, unfortunately. And I should have known better, but I made a kind of a rookie mistake on it, unfortunately.
But that's, I think, really important for the audience to know, right? Is that, like, you've been buying a lot of these photos and submitting them and starting to understand, you know, the difference between the 1 and the 3, because to the naked eye, a lot of this stuff looks all the same. And so there are these very fine details that will let you identify it. And that's part of what, you know, PSA and their authentication team are looking for.
Right. And then this is pretty cool too, because I'm sure we see a lot of these where you'll see like the fonts, the publication on the bottom here. You'll see it for like for music labels do it. Like this is Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols and again, this is a type 3. I loved it because, you know, it's really hard to find like vintage punk photos, even if it's a type 3. This is a publicity photo, so more than 99.9% of the time, publicity photos are type 3s. They're labeled as, classified as type 3s, and they'll be labeled as a publicity photo. But again, this is from Warner Brothers. This is still vintage. So of him sitting in the airplane reading a magazine, this is still was made probably in 1978 because they put circa.
Yeah.
And you'll see the stamps on the back here, or it's got some writing. He wrote 78, the photographer did. He's got an archive label on there. So If you see anything like this, and you like lobby cards, like the movies, like Terminator or Star Wars, or something will have Star Wars on it. It can be colored, black and white. But if you see those, 99.9% of the time, they're going to be labeled as a Type 3 photo. The only difference is if they decide to reprint it 20 years later, or there are times, especially back in the day, when they re-released movies. For instance, I had one that's actually on auction with Fanatics right now. That's Sean Connery as James Bond from Goldfinger.
Oh, cool.
And I think Goldfinger came out in 63 or 64. I'm not sure on top of my head, but one of those years. And this was the re-release of Goldfinger in 66. So it was still a Type 3 photo, but it was a re-release.
Okay.
That makes any sense.
Very cool.
That's what they did. And here is a Type 4. This is of Pink Floyd of Type 4. So that means it came from a duplicate negative. And it's still kind of cool because it kind of looks, I like kind of the age of it. But you can tell like it's a little muddy. You understand?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll come through as well
the
podcast, but you can definitely in person tell, when a photo has that blur compared to the sharpness of what we were mentioning.
And it sucks because I saw this and I just took a gamble, and believe me, it doesn't matter. I won't be able to get top dollar for this, but to sell this for like 200, 300, it's not going to be a problem because there are a lot of Pink Floyd fans out there.
100%.
Especially in the hobby. But this one still had the photographer, the archivist stamp on it, London Features International. And I've bought many photos from them that have been Type 1 with a sticker and the stamp on it. That came back Type 1. I mean, I even had a Prince. I had U2 photo that all came from them. So I was like, might as well take the gamble with the Pink Floyd one. And I actually do have, it's with Heritage, a Type 2 of Pink Floyd with Syd Barrett from their very first album.
Oh, wow.
And it looks beautiful, Zach. I mean, it is like the blacks are black, the whites are white. It's super sharp. And then Heritage didn't want to put it on auction. So I was like, give it back to me because I will have no problem selling this one for top dollar. How can you? But this is a Type 4.
Okay.
And,
cool. So maybe you could talk to. Yeah, so maybe you could talk to us a little bit, Merlin. So really cool to run us through the different types, but what types of images are you looking for? Like, what have you found? Because you obviously sell a lot of different stuff. Like you're showing us right now. Here's an image of the world, right, from space.
Yeah, it's the Earth, and this is this is a beautiful photo. I'm actually thinking about slabbing it, even though I know for sure this is a Type 2. I already know on top of my head. If you look, it's got all the information on the back. I mean, it's got everything. So this is like when you see this much DNA on the back, with all the stamps, the descriptions. I mean, it's got everything on here. Then you know this is authentic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this one kind of tells you. It says this was the picture of the Earth taken from the moon in April 1970, but it wasn't developed until January of 1978. It says on here.
Okay.
So they said this is a restrike, meaning it's a Type 2.
Yeah.
But
really cool image. So can you talk to the audience a little bit about what types of things are you looking for when you see a piece that you're like, this could be, valuable and is worth, me taking and getting graded? Like, what are you looking for in those types of photos?
Oh, that's cool. Let me show you. I'm looking for content. And that's important. Like, it's just like sports. You want things that are popular or hype or goats or legends. I mean, if you go and look on auction houses, that helps a lot. eBay, things that aren't non-sports wise, anything of Marilyn Monroe. I did another novice move. I found a Marilyn Monroe by mistake on eBay, Type 1 photo, a pinup one from 1947.
Wow.
Beautiful photo. I put it up on eBay for $2,000 right before I drove down to see the great curator to do our podcast from his house that day. Thank God I was driving because, oh my gosh, my phone was just going crazy. Like 30 offers. People offered me 1,000, 15. I'm like, what is going on? Time I got the dance, someone just bought it straight up for $2,000. I definitely sold myself short on this photo. I probably could have made more. I had probably $400 invested in it, probably like $300
There you
for
go.
the photo, $100 to get it authenticated and slide by PSA.
Sure.
But man, I bet you I could have gotten $5,000 to $10,000 for that one.
Well, you still did okay, Merlin. What are you going to do?
I did. But Maryland is one of the hottest things, historical things like Kennedy. Oh, did you see the one where it was like D-Day, where they're coming out of the
I did. That was really cool. Yeah, like I don't know what the vehicle is, but yeah, like the boat landing vehicle.
The U-boat, yeah. It's a U-boat. And you know, remember in like Private Ryan, like 90% of those guys got shot and killed in those things. Yeah. So the thought of those guys like about to face living hell coming out of that U-boat is scary. I think that sold for like $40,000.
Wow.
There was one, a Type 1 color, and they can also do this. It was a snapshot. It was just someone taking a photo of John Lennon outside of the Dakota apartments, you know, where he lived, where he was shot. And believe it or not, Mark David Chapman is in the background handing him the book for him to sign.
Wow.
And I have met that guy who bought that off the Heritage. He goes to the Dallas show a lot. He paid $26,000 for that snapshot. And that was just like someone like you or me just so, oh my gosh, there's John Lennon, took the photo because they could develop that. Or like, remember like the Kodak disposable cameras you would just have on your wedding tables, people's weddings, you go and, you know, take pictures of yourself and get that developed. You could send those, if there's someone famous in those photos, you could send those in to get developed. That'd be a Type 1. I mean, I have one here of, you know who this is, Mork and Mindy.
Oh, yeah.
This is taken from a Polaroid by a famous photographer, Jim Britt. He actually signed it on the back here.
Very cool.
And this is a Polaroid before, and these photos were used for TV Guide. And if you see it from TV Guide, it's this photo, but he took this is before you had like instant replay or digital. Mm-hmm. So you would have to take a Polaroid to see if the lighting is to your.
That was like your test proof. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. And then he would, you know, finally shoot on 35, black and white and color for different, you know, variations. But that they will do Polaroids even like the instant ones, you know, come out. If you're just like, I've seen some of like Jordan and Kobe of just. They were terrible. They looked like my grandmother took the photos, but they sold for like $500.
Yeah,
because they're on the court. So it's disgusting. Hip hop photos are really popular. Here's one. I have a poster over here that's a Grandmaster Flash autograph, Furious 5. Wow. So I always wanted one of these, and I finally won this one on Golden. This is Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 from the early 80s. This is Type 1 photo. It's a smaller one. It's like 5x7.
Sure.
And again, you'll see the DNA on the back.
Yep.
But hip hop is really huge. Old school punk, old school hip hop. Man, if you can find anything like Wu-Tang Clan, Beastie Boys. Yeah. Like I had 1985 Type 3 publicity photo of the Beastie Boys. And that thing sold on Heritage for $1,000.
Wow. That's awesome.
Because people love Beastie Boys. People love punk. If you had stuff of like the Sex Pistols, of the Clash, but good photos of Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, any of those people, it'd be great sale. Even like vintage stuff of LL Cool J, things like that, or a rock. I know you've bought a few. Rolling Stone, of course.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone be good, but it costs to be bad, just like the Beatles. I thought, because I had found a 64 of Paul McCartney, the Beatles, from A Hard Day's Night. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it was a great photo. It only sold for $100, dude. Because believe it or not, there's a lot of photos of these artists.
Right.
Because they were in their prime. Everybody, their brother was taking photos of them.
So that's an interesting point. So there's a component of subject, like you said, the historical stuff, some of the music, some of the famous athletes, famous times, dates and times, events, right?
But photos, yes.
But like you're saying, you could still hit a home run and get the great subject Type 1. But if there's a photo or an image that people can get a lot of that individual, maybe that brings the value down. Whereas, like you said, some of the punk stuff's really valuable because it's really hard to find it.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And then I had, like, you saw me, I had the Type 1 photo of Michael Jordan.
Yes.
That were slam dunking 1990, the first year they went to the championship, right?
Yep.
Did they win that same year too?
90-91 was the first title. Yep.
Oh, it was. Okay. So it was a great photo. They played Boston Celtics. It was shown in the Chicago Tribune by a famous photographer.
Yeah.
I sent that one in the golden. It sold for about $7,500.
Wow.
Man, I could have gotten more. I don't know. But let me tell you, guess how much I paid for that photo, Zach? $100. And the person even thought I had it for sale literally for like $200 raw at so many shows. People could have bought this from me for less than $200. If they offered me $150, I would have taken it, because even the seller thought it was a type 3.
Well, you never know, man. I've had 2 images of Jordan dunking, both on Team USA. One of them was a type 1, which I've since sold, and the other one is a type 2. And I couldn't tell visually, honestly, looking side by side, the difference. But you're to the point that we talked about earlier, is that the type 1 and 2, it's the original negative. So the quality of that image is still phenomenal. And the photographer had just reprinted that image, basically 6 years later, right? Originally it was in 92 when they were in the Olympics with the Dream Team. And then the one that I do have still was from 98. But it looks crystal sharp. And I think that image of him dunking is spectacular. And I think it's worth a lot, but it's in the PC.
Yeah, exactly.
Back on my shelf.
Now you need stuff that's eye appeal, just because even the subject matter might be famous, but if it's just a boring photo, you're going to get a boring price for it. Don't expect, because it's someone super famous or topical at the moment, that you're going to get rich overnight from it. You're not. I mean, I've had one of Billy Joel from like 75 forever, and I can't sell it to save my life, but it's just him on stage. But it's one of his like first photos, that you can find. It's a type 1, but it's just not pleasing to the eye. I mean, I had another big sell I had was the you saw the atomic bomb one from Baker Day, the testing in the ocean, which was that incident is shown in Oppenheimer. It was shown in Godzilla -1. People even showed me the same photo was used on the cover of a magazine. People wanted to share with me. I gave that one the heritage, and that one sold for like also about $7,500. But man, the eye appeal is there. You see the ships flying through the air. That's a great photo. I had one of Bob Marley, 1975, taken by Jim Anderson, and a concert in Central Park, which is also an iconic photo. I wish I'd gotten more for it at the time, but I made about $2,500 on it. But it's Bob Marley, for Christ's sakes, and he's rocking out. You see the dreads flying in the air. That's what you want to see from Bob Marley. Yeah. He's just not sitting there, eating a biscuit or a salad or something.
Yeah, totally.
And things like this. I mean, these are like this, as you can tell, this was taken off, in a photographer studio, which is cool. It's probably was used for a hip hop magazine or their album, in sleeve, because still LPs. Let me show you the one with the. Let's see here. Like this here is this is type 1 of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who actually he introduced Herbie Hancock the other night.
Oh, cool.
Kareem did, because he's a big jazz fan.
Yeah.
This is cool too. This is a type 3, but it's the mini mask of Rey Mysterio. But that's a type 3 from 2004. I have already sold one of these. I sold one of these on Golden. This is type 1 of Seinfeld and Elaine, Julia Dreyfus at the famous diner. Yeah. It's a famous setting. I paid like hardly anything for this one. The first one I sent into Golden, sold for almost $1,000, which very surprised me big time.
Wow.
I was very surprised. Even sometimes things like this kind of sell. I haven't really taken a chance. If you see any photos like this that kind of look like they were developed on a brown paper grocery bag, they're very brown, but these are called wire image photos. Okay. And most of the 90% of the time, they're going to be classified as a type 3. So the type 1 photo is what they used. And then this printing on this teletype, this called teletype on here. Okay. Was used with tape. So that print, remember that Prince one I talked about? That said one of a kind. That was a press proof photo it said it was even heavily used for a world publication, all the press by UPI, because it had the original sticker or the tape on there with the teletype. And so what they did, they used a wire, which is kind of like a fax machine back in the day, which was expensive. So they would put the teletype and the photo on one page, not the teletype on the back rarely, because back then it cost a lot of money to copy the front and the back.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool, Merlin. You've got so many amazing pieces in your collection, and I'm sure we could sit here for hours and just look at them. But I appreciate you sharing, what you have. And I guess, I want to sort of shift gears a little with you, because we've talked about grading of photos. We've talked a lot about music photos, and you recently became the first ever ambassador for audio media grading. So congrats to that.
Thank you. Yeah, you just had Robbie on.
We did just have Robbie on, and that was a really cool conversation to learn a little bit more about that. But could you maybe explain to the audience, if they missed it, what AMG is and sort of what they offer?
Yeah, it's audio media grading. And I talked about, first of all, how it's funny because no matter what I do, whatever job I go into, somehow leads me back into the music world. And maybe because I'm, like you said, very passionate about music. Yeah. I love music. When I moved out here to LA to start going to film, I started off as a set designer and then just kind of fell into music DJing. And then I went back to editing. And during the pandemic, not only was I doing those building for the shows, but if during the pandemic, a lot of musicians were just making music like left and right because they had nothing else to do. They were stuck at home or their apartment. And I was friends with a lot of musicians who were in bands, fortunately. And they were like, Merlin, can you just make some videos? We shot some stuff at home, just a bunch of hobnob of stuff. Or can you just pull things off YouTube that is licensed that I can get copyright for fair use? And so I would just start making music videos. And then the same thing with the hobby. I started off in the sports cards, then it ventured into Marvel and Star Wars cards. And before you know it, music cards started becoming very popular again. And music cards are the hottest things. Same with the photos. That is probably my best sell besides historical is music photos. And then the same thing, I started running to these guys with AMG, audio media grading. They grade and slab audio media and not video media, because a lot of people have hit me up on IG like, Merlin, I've got a VHS cassette of Wayne's World or something. I don't know. Or a laser disc of The Godfather. It's a whatever Criterion version. And I'm like, well, that's great and all, but even if it's Talking Heads Stop Making Sense, that's a movie I meant, and that's video media. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different company. This has to be audio media, meaning it has to be an LP, a vinyl record, a cassette, a CD, reel to reel, even an 8-track. They even will do licensed autographed microphones. If you have the authentication, they will. I think JSA authenticates the autos for them, and they just started seeing me at all these shows and at the National, and they saw my passion that I had so much music memorabilia, like the cards, the photos. They saw me selling. They saw me pitching. And then the guys of the Burbank Card Show were like, Merlin, why don't you ask those guys that you'll help them out and stuff? And I was like, well, they do hang out in my booth a lot. They're always hanging out and they're always quizzing me about music. Everybody loves quizzing me about music, and I go for it. It drives Dan crazy, though, because he doesn't know any of it. He's like, what were y'all talking about? And I'm like, oh, it's this music stuff. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? The worst thing is they could say no. So I pitched them my idea about being a brand ambassador here on the West Coast, since they're out of West Palm Beach, Florida. But those guys are all over the place. Steve Aoki's one of their, primary shareholders, but he's just kind of like the face. He's not really present because he tours all the time. But all the CEOs every single day started getting on the phone with me and chatting, and knew my passion and love for music. They're like, Merlin, we like your idea. Why don't you represent us on the West Coast at shows? So the first one I have done will be the Burbank show. And when this airs, I will have already done the flagship show for me and AMG, representing them. And I'm going to be pitching, educating, just like the photos. I'll be educating people on how to submit your audio media to get grading, what should be you be looking for, what should be graded. And again, maybe it's something that, your first love gave you or something. She gave you that first Dave Matthews album or something. I don't know, or Hootie album back in the 90s in college.
Yeah.
And you just want to slab that as a keepsake.
Yeah.
Or it could be you may have a valuable thing of the Beatles Butcher album, the famous album where the dolls, the baby dolls, and their heads are off and everything, which is a famous cover. It's worth a lot. Or a test pressing of Led Zeppelin 1, or the first test pressing of the Beastie Boys. And you don't want to play something like that. So it's just better for you to slab it and show that piece of art. And so I want to educate people on that. I'll be giving out flyers at these shows. I'll be at the front row card shows, also doing the same thing. And I will also be taking submissions.
Okay.
So if you want to bring your audio media to me at any of these shows in Southern California, bring them to me. Let me look at them, and I'll do whatever I can to help you submit. But I'm really looking forward to see where this journey goes. And I hope I can do more things with them in the future, because I really see their potential. I see the other companies, their competition falling out. They're buying them out. So I see AMG kind of like the PSA of the audio media world, where I am also friends with a lot of people who do grade a lot of audio media. I mean, some serious, like, guys are sending in like 200 pieces of items that are getting graded. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of money too. Because again, it costs anywhere from $50 to $100. I think it's $50 for a cassette or CD and $100 for an LP.
Okay.
Just think about it. Almost 200 items. That's a lot of money, man, that you're grading. And they're all doing crossovers now. So all the companies that folded or got bought out by EMG, they're sending in those slab stuff from those old companies and getting it reslabbed with AMG, because they know that that's the only way to sell it or make their stuff now more premium relevant. Because of that.
Very cool.
So we'll see where this takes. And it's definitely because cards, I think, are more of a certain niche. I mean, it is growing around the world. And as you know, Dan and I were in London. We were at different shows, and people were really getting into this, but they really, they're still learning about it because it's new to them. They don't want to spend a lot of money on even though they love like Trevor Lawrence, Jordan, and Tom Brady, a lot of American sports, they're not going to spend over $200 on a card.
Right.
Especially a PSA. So, like, for instance, Trevor Lawrence, the Jaguars play twice a year in London. So they love the Jaguars. They love Trevor Lawrence. But they're going to spend only like a $200 Trevor Lawrence. They ain't going to spend $5,000 on the Trevor Lawrence card.
Sure.
And it's because they're collecting right now. They're not learning about investment yet. It's new to them. And but if you think about it, all over the world, people have audio media. Everyone has a cassette tape. Everybody has a CD. Your parents or friends, and they could be sitting on money. And it's more worldwide, and hopefully people will be more educated. Like, man, maybe that Elvis record that's down in the basement is worth something.
Totally. So you'd mentioned, I just real quick want to back up. You'd mentioned that it was $50 to $100 for the submission fees, depending upon what the medium is itself. What's the typical turnaround time like once you submit something like that?
It's about like a month or two. Okay. It's like a month. But what's also great about AMG is that they will do custom slabs. Like I have some that are, I think I have like Blackpink and Taylor Swift. Like I did some of the first ones I did were things that I know I could resell, and I'll use those to resell to make more money to slab some of my PC, because I got a hell of a PC, especially like original dance music and house music and rock music and stuff like that. That I even have like the very first pressing of before the song even became popular. It was one of my favorite 80s songs. Kate Bush's "Running Up That Hill."
Oh wow!
I love that song. It was produced by David Gilmour, Pink Floyd. I'm a huge Gilmour fan. I'm seeing him twice next month here in LA, but I found that in Amoeba Records. If you heard Amoeba Records, which is a famous record chain here in Los Angeles. And I found that, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy that. It was all like wrapped up and nice and neat and clean. I was like, you know what? That'll be worth something one day. and this was prior for it, being on Stranger Things and being a world hit again.
Yeah, it's very much like the theme for Stranger Things now.
Yeah, exactly. And every millennial and Gen Zer was dancing to it and knows all the words, just like they do Queen. So, I mean, think about it. That was something that I bought 20 years ago at Amoeba for $20. And now that thing is probably worth hundreds of dollars now, raw. Who knows how much it is worth slab. I also have many like disco records, deep track records that are used for samples and house music for like hip hop. Like I've got some funk stuff that Dr. Dre sampled and Jay-Z sampled.
Cool.
That are classics that should not be played.
Yeah,
which should be slabbed with. And
well,
it's just great. So the opportunities are just endless. And the thing is, another thing is, I was trying to see what the reception was. So I go to a lot of record stores. I go to a lot of music trivia nights. And there are a lot of people in the industry here in Los Angeles and the records. And I wanted to see what their perception of getting audio media grading was. Because, if you've asked some people who are like diehard wrestling fans or Star Wars fans, when we started getting stuff slabbed and reselling it, man, I was like, some people loved it, but a lot of people thought Dan and I were public enemy number one. They wanted us tarred and feathered for slabbing. How could we slab a Star Wars card and then sell it for 10 times more? How dare we, man? So I thought, like, man, I better ask these people before they want to, I may not be invited back to another party or a concert again at their venue. But they were like very receptive about it. They could understand. They're like, well, dude, I think it's probably best if you maybe have one that you pay less for that you want to play. And the one that is worth a lot of money that should not be played. You already know that's worth thousands of dollars. You slab that because you cherish it more. So why would we play something that's worth thousands of dollars? It's just unheard of. You can't see it. So everybody kind of agreed with me that expensive stuff should be slabbed.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's cool. That's good that you got that sort of vote of confidence, right? And,
right.
Well, it's really been interesting, Merlin, to talk to you. And like I said, you are always such a wealth of information on a variety of different collectibles. You've had success across the variety of different collectibles at each stop sort of along your journey and along your career. So I'd love for you to reflect a little bit on that and let us know what has been sort of the most rewarding aspect for you, within this collectible space.
Oh man, that's just great. I mean, and you're always around me, Zach. Like you and I, fit like a hand to glove, like from day one. You always come to say hello to me, and likewise, we go out for dinner, drinks. We share a lot of the same friends in this hobby.
Yeah,
we know some of the same people. I mean, everybody that you've had on your show already, I know I've had bonding time. I've had dinners. I've had drinks with these people. I've had bonding. I've got to not only know them through the hobby, but get to know them personally too. Yeah, and that's priceless. You know what I mean? Like. That's what it's more than about. It's more than just like flipping, trying to make money on a card or memorabilia. It's about making friends and sharing things and just having interest. And there are people from all over the world who may have, different personality than I do, or different views of the world than I do, or whatever. They may like chocolate. I like vanilla. I don't know. You know what I mean? But the thing is, we're all here for one thing. And nothing tickles me more than people who I know are completely different from me, but they want to come and they want to show me their pop culture stuff, their cars, their music. And they're like Merlin, look what I have. Are you proud of me? Like, they're like a kid. This is like a 50-year-old man. Like, Merlin, are you proud of me? Like I'm their pops, you know what I mean? Like we're the same age, or I'm old. And they're just so happy and giddy to share these experiences with me. And I can't trade that for any amount of dollar in the world. That means more to me. And for for a weekend, we can escape and just have the best time in the world and just share what we love about the hobby. And I wouldn't take that away for the world. Like no doc said no dollar is worth that alone,
Yeah.
And that keeps me going. that makes me more do anything than anything in the world. How about you?
I love that, man. I think it's so true. I talk to a lot of, sure, there's people in this space, collectibles of all types, right? That are in it for the money. They're in it for the flip. They're in it for all, the financial reasons, which there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has their own thing, but there's so many amazing people, so many amazing collectors that are in it to learn about, like you said, other types of collectibles, or to build bonds and get to know each other that might be totally different walks of life, no other common interest, but you share interest about that collectible. And it is a really special place to be able to do that. And I agree with you. Like, that's, part of what I enjoy so much about having this show is that I get to connect with, people who I've known over the years on a different level, on a deeper level, and get to know a little bit more about them. And I think that's cool that's, sort of where your head goes as well. So, hey, I don't want to, take up your whole day. I want to be.
Well, I want to also say one more thing too, though. I mean, also, I know you're getting into it, and I'm very proud of where you're going. Your journey is like everything is a silver lining sometimes.
Yeah,
and you've started creating your art cards, and as we know, that art cards are becoming. That's another thing I'm kind of venturing into as well as. If you think about it, photography is original art. The great curators getting to original comic book art. Yeah. The art card world has gotten big with piggy banks, with the glue trap guy, other people. You yourself is venturing this and becoming a success with this. So there is a whole new market with the art card world, and I can't wait to see where it goes too. And I think the great curator and I are also going. We're not going to make art cards, even though he's doing the Saturday morning cards. Right. But I think we're going to get into a world where we're going to start collaborating with art cardists and other comic book artists, and even the photography, and see where that goes as well. I mean, the opportunities are endless. So I'm really looking forward to where 2024 and 2025 takes us into more of a pop culture art journey, as we will say. And I love, because like a lot of people, I mean, you're doing the athletes and everything, but maybe down the road you'll do some pop culture, some music, because I know you love music.
I've got some stuff cooking, Merlin. So you're speaking the right language.
But anytime when Piggy Banks, those other guys have music, that's when I try to click on it. Yep. And I was getting lucky, and now I can't get lucky with those anymore, man, unless I want to pay $2,000 for the stuff. Yeah. Like, dang it. But I'm saying that's how it's just crazy how things on a drop of a dime will change. And now, before you know it, things you couldn't give away for free are now the hottest thing the next day.
Yep.
So you never know.
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much, Merlin. That means a lot to me coming from you. But no, you're right. The art card world specifically has really started to blossom. But I think a lot of it, comes from the fact that collectors love things that are unique and new. And right now, I think a lot of the trading card space, at least, has become a little bit stale, and they're recycling ideas and designs and things like that, where card artists are really trying to push the envelope more and coming up with cool, original, unique ideas. And I think it's part of the reason why, you're seeing music grading come to the forefront. You're seeing photography come to the forefront, because these are new spaces collectors can get into. They can learn about it. Sure, there's some financial opportunity to make some plays, but I think it's just interests people because it's new and it's unique. And I hope that the art card, market, I feel it's really just scratching the surface, and it's got a long way to go. So it's exciting. So we'll see where it goes. But as I was saying, I don't want to take up your whole day, and I appreciate you taking time to come here. But I ask all my guests before they leave, can you give the audience, one little sort of golden piece of advice, either for an aspiring collector, entrepreneur? What would you tell them as sort of your golden tip of advice for the hobby?
Well, I'm sure a lot of your guests all will repeat the same thing. Collect what you like, collect what you love, because if you love it, I'm sure there's 100 other people who love the same thing. And when don't just buy something and collect it just to try to flip and get money off of it. Because if your heart's not there, you're eventually going to get burned out and used up and eaten alive by all the sharks in the hobby world and these shows. But if you're really passionate, and like you said, you've known us, Dan and I, from day one, and luckily Dan took me out of the Southern California area because he saw me trying to sell all these pop culture cards, and no one was even giving me the time of day at these shows. Takes me to Dallas, and I get totally just cleaned out. the first time ever there. The second time, third, like people have just never seen so many slab pop culture stuff. The Star Wars, the Galaxy stuff blew up. A lot of the Super Mario Brothers, the Marvel stuff, the wrestling. And the thing was, it made it easy to sell because it was stuff I actually loved. If you weren't going to buy it, then I don't mind keeping it because I love it. You know what I mean? Totally. So I'm going to there's going to be a lot of things. And still, even when I'm at these next shows coming up, there's some things I might have diamond hands. And I try to tell people like, listen, I'm in no hurry to sell this, but yeah, I might have it $2,000. It might be like a 1 of 1 or 1 of 5 of something.
Sure.
And yeah, maybe the last comp of it from 2 years ago, you showed me on all from 2 years ago was 500. But a lot has happened with this person since then.
Yeah.
You know, Dune came out, a second movie came out again. We use Dune for example, which made it Dune even bigger now. That whole franchise now is super blowing up. So if you got anything with, and I don't mean like the David Lynch movie, but I'm talking about the new one, the first two. If you got any memorabilia of them, that stuff's going to be hot sell. It's going to be hot. Everybody wants Dune, or even anything with Wolverine or Deadpool, because people love it. It's a great movie. It did successful. So that's going to be the hot pop culture stuff. But the thing was, I don't mind selling that stuff. If it's 2,000, you're like, dude, 2 years ago it was 500. Well, I'm only going to get rid of it 2,000, or I'm holding on to it. It's mine, you know, just.
And you love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mind getting stuck with it. If I'm desperate selling, then I'm going to put a desperate price on it. Right? Like the same thing with my Prince rookies. I have a Prince rookie card from 1979. It says True Rookie. It even says it's a rookie card on the back from Warner Brothers. It's the photo from his first album. You know, it's like $2,000. I'm not gonna shave it down to 1,000. I'd rather keep it. I love Prince. You love Prince, or anything of Chicago with Jordan. You like the Stones. I don't know who else, you know, from Chicago artists that you like. I don't know if you like Chance the Rapper or Kanye.
So Pearl Jam is
Pearl Jam,
one of my faves. So I'm actually looking for a nice copy of a 10 album. That'd be a cool one.
God, well, if you found any early Pearl Jam photos or Mother Love
I haven't yet. I need to try to track some down.
Yes, but see, like when you love something, you're seeking that stuff out, and you find it, that you love it so much that you know there's other people who love it. You're going to be able to sell it easier because you believe in it.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like it makes it more sellable. And when I had this passion and took this passion to all these card shows around the country and the world, and there was stuff I'm selling passionately. Well, it's easily to move that stuff because I believe in it. And I sell it better because my pitch is better because I'm believing it.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you know, I think it's in anything in life, you know, and it's if you follow your passion and you're willing to work hard, that those things pay off. And, you know, I think it's the same in the collectible space, that if you collect what you love, you know, even if for some reason it goes to zero, it doesn't matter because it wasn't about the dollars, it was about the item. And I think that's really a great piece of advice to give people. So, hey, you know, before I let you go, do you have any events? I know you had mentioned it quickly, but I want to make sure the audience knows where they could find you coming up here in September.
Yeah, well, I've already been at the Burbank Card Show when you see this, doing my first AMG representation, but I will be, hopefully after the Burbank show, I'll be representing them again at the Front Row Card Show in September in Pasadena. Okay. And I'll more than likely be at the Front Row Card Show in Vegas in mid-October. And maybe I can catch an Eagles show at the Sphere. Zach, maybe come out and meet me, and we'll go to the Sphere.
That'd be fun, man. That'd be fun.
I'll see anything at that place, man. I don't know if you've been yet or not. Like I saw you two in Fish. And if you saw that viral video of Drew Carey when he's with the fish, he said people's heads were melting, exploding. Well, that really happened because man, this changes the game of concert venues.
Yeah, I've not had an opportunity to go, but I've heard amazing things. So maybe I need to meet you out there at some point. So, hey, also, where can people find you? You want to give them a shameless plug?
It's down below. You'll see it below. But if you're listening to the podcast and not watching it, check me out. My name is Merlin Peck, but you can check me out at Merlin Collects on Instagram, on YouTube, TikTok, even eBay. If there's something you like on eBay, like Merlin, I saw you or listened to you on the Hobby Hustle. I like some of those items that you've posted on IG or whatever social media platform. Hit me up. I mean, I'll make you a deal because you told me you listened to me or watched me on Hobby Hustle.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Well, Merlin, this has been an awesome conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and, especially when it comes to the type photos and music grading. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on and obviously talk with me, but also talk to our audience. And I just really appreciate that you always bring a positive attitude to the collectible world. And it doesn't go without notice, man. Because like I said, I know whenever I can see you, give you a big high five, a hug, and you just put a smile on my face, and you do that with everybody, man. So keep being positive. I'm excited to see you at a show soon. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. You always brighten my day, Zach. Thank you.
Have a great one. Everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. I hope that you learned something. I hope that maybe you found some inspiration. And if you enjoyed the show, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe. And of course, please, please, please share with any of your friends and spread the word. And remember, keep collecting, keep hustling, and we'll see you next week on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide. Thanks so much for watching.
Hobby Hustle is brought to you by Collector Creative. If you're a collectible brand or company looking for help with marketing, branding, design, or development, head over to collectorcreative.com and drop Zach a line. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at collector_creative. And be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide.